Hey everyone, Gaijin Goombah here. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of a little game called Toukiden? Basically, take Monster Hunter, remove all the tediums, emphasize smooth combat, and stuff it full of Japanese culture, and that's this game. And when I say stuff with Japanese culture, I really mean it. In my 2.5 years of culturally analyzing games, I have yet to find one with so many nods and references to Japanese culture in its entirety. But one aspect of Japanese culture this game not only constantly but effectively makes reference to, which completely blew my mind, is the Japanese religion of Shinto, or Way of the Gods. No joke, never in my life have I experienced a game that utilizes and references so many concepts of Shinto. And that includes Okami, the game where you literally play as the head of the Shinto kami, Amaterasu. Yeah, it's that crazy. Now there are many aspects of Shinto, but in the interest of time for this video, let's break them down into 3 main aspects: purity, nature, and spirit. Starting with purity. From the birth of the major kami, to the rituals of priests and priestesses, to the origins of all yokai or Japanese monsters, to the actions of Japan's everyday people, purity and purification are the central focus of Shinto, as are many aspects of this game. In Shinto, there resides what's called kegare, a pollution of one's soul, and kegare can come from all kinds of sources, not just actions. Literal filth, dead bodies, even the degradation caused by time is a source of impurity. What differs from most religions is that this impurity should be cleansed not because of the morality of the person at risk, but rather to keep oneself from essentially bad luck, curses, and even transformations into yokai and oni. In fact, 90% of all of the mythological monsters in Japan that we in the West hear about were created from the body and soul of one who was killed and transformed or corrupted in life to become said monsters. Like the Wanyudo, a monk who did not purify himself of his sins before death, and because of this, his head was torn off, placed on a flaming wheel, and is systematically tortured as he rolls, while also working for hell, searching for and condemning the damned. Not just humans, but kami like Izanami, items, and even plant life can become corrupted by kegare through death, disease, or even simply the passage of time and become monsters. Basically, these yokai are the physical embodiment of kegare. Going back to the game, the enemy oni are the same kind of yokai. Pure beings of kegare that must be cleansed in order to be completely defeated. Instead of carving out monster pieces to use as weapons, every broken part of the oni is instead purified through what the game calls the ritual of purification. After an appropriate amount of time has passed performing the ritual, the monster or monster part becomes a cleansed resource item for crafting. Defeating and cleansing oni are also one of the primary ways of freeing lost souls that have been devoured by the oni called mitama. Much like how corrupted souls of the dead need to be exorcised and cleansed in order to be restored from their evil form, so too do these souls in-game need to be cleansed and released from oni. There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to mitama, but we'll get to that in a bit. The purification theme doesn't end there either. One other aspect of cleansing I'm sure many of you are familiar with is the concept of bathing and the use of onsen. In-game, when you bathe at the onsen, you gain a buff to your character for the next battle. That is, unless you go during the bathing hours of the opposite gender, but if you're lucky, they may let you stay. Anyway, as I'm sure you can see from the gameplay footage, there is more going on here than simply taking a relaxing hot bath. The white robe and string of beads would probably lead you to believe that there's something more spiritual going on here, and you would be correct. This is a direct reference to misogi, a process in which men and women would dress in white, sometimes clutching a string of prayer beads as a focus, and undertake specific tasks, such as prayer, calisthenics called tori fune, and sometimes were given salt and or sake to put in the water for further purification before they entered. Once they did enter, they would constantly chant, Hairai tamae, Kiyome tamae, Rokkon shoujo, which is asking the kami that dwell within their location to cleanse impurities from the elements of their human body and soul. Nowadays, the practice of misogi is only done by a few specific groups, mostly martial artists. But even in its modernized form, the spirit of soul cleansing during bathing hasn't quite disappeared. While in Japan, Aki and I visited Oedo Onsen Monogatari. Now this place was not only famous for its recreation of Edo Japan's style, food, and entertainment, but is the largest collection of body baths, foot baths, and other cleansing treatments I've ever seen in Japan. Heck, there's even an onsen for your dog next door. These people take onsen bathing very seriously. Having experienced the true onsen, Aki and I can tell you for certain, we not only felt clean and relaxed, but it felt like everything negative that had been bothering us in our lives had just disappeared.
Okay, so after being in the onsen, how did you feel?
I feel a lot less self-conscious about my body.
Oh yeah, but like, do you feel clean and like pure and everything?
Yes, and my feet don't hurt nearly as much.
Yeah, same here. So, cool.
Even when simply visiting any shrine in Japan, you must wash your hands and mouth out to ritually purify yourself before you enter the sacred grounds of the shrine. And yes, they also take this very seriously. As a final example of how in-depth this game goes to the concept of Shinto purification, the game references the holiday of Setsubu, which takes place every February 3rd. The word itself means seasonal division, and it acts as the first day of spring in Japan. During this holiday, men of the household would put on an oni mask and run from the women and children of the house, who would throw special roasted soybeans called fukumame, and shouting, "Oni wa soto, fuku wa uchi." It symbolizes driving out oni and the bad luck and bad health that comes with them, and purifying the home for the new year. Shinto shrines and even Buddhist temples will participate in the celebration by throwing out fukumame, as well as candies, snacks, and even money to gather crowds who push and shove trying to grab them. Alright, let's move on to nature, and don't worry, this one isn't nearly as complicated, but it's just as important. Shinto places a great deal of importance on harmony with nature and the denouncing of actions that would harm it. This concept should go hand in glove since kami are not necessarily all-powerful beings, but various spirits of the natural world. The pollution of nature also pollutes the kami into yokai. With this, a great number of plant life and natural formations have been designated sacred with the spirit that dwells in them to be protected by the shrine or local people. I've actually come across a few in my time in Japan, like this one from Osaka that was said to protect a local castle from lightning by drawing the lightning away from the castle and hitting it instead. There's another one at Meiji Jingu in the Harajuku ward in Tokyo, which has been known as a sacred meeting ground. This one even has its own offering box to give to the spirit of the tree. All kinds of stories dwell within each sacred natural area. Toukiden also puts a great deal of focus on nurturing and caring for nature within the game. Aside from a few cutscenes that show the characters lamenting over the loss of forests, waterways, and other natural elements to the corruption of the Oni, there exists a sacred tree in the player's home village of Utakata. It starts out being nothing more than a small house for the spirit of the tree, but as you give it money, which blesses you with craftable items, it grows and grows until it becomes a massive tree of splendor. Constant care of the spirit of the tree rewards the player, just as caring for nature and its spirit keeps an area well connected with the kami and free from kegare. A small reference to an overlooked aspect of Shinto, but one that is subtly omnipresent in the religion and in Japan in general. Now then, with all of this constant talk of spirits and kami, let's finally address them in detail. In Toukiden, you have access to what are called mitama. In-game, they are the souls of historical Japanese figureheads that hail from multiple time periods who were devoured by Oni. When you release them, you're able to utilize their abilities in combat by equipping them to your weapon. Now, believe it or not, there's actually a lot of references in this one simple game mechanic. Let's start with the mitama themselves. In Shinto, mitama are the honorable spirit of a person or kami. One would think that only the spirits of the kami would be enshrined, like Amaterasu at Ise Jingu. But actually, many historical figures have had their souls enshrined, like Emperor Meiji at Meiji Jingu, reaching the state of being basically equal to the kami of nature. With Toukiden, having such a long list of historical figures that aid you in battle makes a lot of sense if we were looking at it from a Shinto point of view. People pray at these shrines of these figures asking for their aid, so in times of crisis like, say, an Oni attack on Japan, their intervention makes sense. Next, let's talk about the most important interaction one can have with the spirits in Shinto, prayer. Now let's look at how Toukiden represents it. In-game, you have an offering box at your HQ. First of all, you select how much money you want to give to the box, clap twice, and on the second clap, keeping your hands together, make a slight bow. Depending on the interval of money that was spent, you may get a big buff, a small buff, or nothing at all. Now, let's look at how Shinto prayer works. First, carefully toss in your offering money into the box. The amount of money given is completely based on your comfort and feelings, but increments of 5, such as 5 yen, 50 yen, or 500 yen, are preferable. This is because 5 yen in Japanese, which is go-in, is a homonym for go-in, which means an honorable bond or relationship. Japan's big on wordplay like that. Next, bow twice. If a Suzu bell is present, ring it a good few times. Then clap twice. This is to make sure that the kami of the shrine is awake when you pray. On the second clap, keep your hands together and pray. After your prayer is done, bow one more time and calmly leave. Now, obviously, going through every single step of prayer would just bog down an action game, but in Toukiden, the importance of just how much money is given, the double clap prayer, the bowing, there's just a lot of similarities going on here. Lastly, let's quickly talk about spirits in conjunction to weapons in Shinto. Many people believe that the souls of samurai dwell within their katanas, which is why they're always carried around with them and passed down through generations. That would make equipping mitama to weapons make a lot more sense. But that statement isn't actually true. Wielders of weapons have the ability to imprint themselves to some degree on their weapons, but it's the weaponsmiths, according to Shinto and Bushido, that instill properties into the weapons. This is why Japanese weaponsmiths will purify themselves and don pure white robes before they work. It can be very easy for kegare to enter into the blade while it's being forged. The greatest example of this resides in the tales of the legendary swordsmiths Masamune and Muramasa. When stuck blade first into a flowing river, Masamune's sword would actually push away leaves and other debris, while Muramasa's blade would attract debris into the blade to be cut. This is to illustrate how Masamune's weapons were created to never cut unjustifiably, where Muramasa's swords were bloodthirsty and battle-hungry. Now, does this mean that Toukiden's process of making weapons from Oni doesn't have a place in Shinto? Absolutely not. In fact, the greatest sword in Japan's history and one of the 3 sacred treasures of ancient Japan's royal family was taken from one of the most terrifying and recognizable monsters in Japan's history, Yamato no Orochi. From his tale, the storm god Susanoo found the sword Ame no Murakumo no Tsurugi, which would later be known as Kusanagi no Tsurugi. And you know what? That's in Toukiden as well. Whew. Wow, that was a lot of information. But it really does show just how much Shinto is represented in Toukiden. But if you want to check out other neat little stories like the tale of Yamato no Orochi and Susanoo, there's an anime I discovered at Crunchyroll.com called Nippon no Mukashi Banashi, or Folk Tales from Japan, and it has over 150 episodes of 3 folk stories per episode. Now, that's a lot of folklore. And while you're there, you can also find new episodes of popular anime like Sailor Moon Crystal, Naruto Shippuden, Fairy Tail, and One Piece, viewable on any computer, Wii U, or mobile device. Premium members not only get to watch their shows ad-free, but also get immediate access to new episodes as soon as they're broadcast in Japan. Crunchyroll has been a constant supporter of Game Exchange Culture Shock, and it was because of them I was able to go to Japan and bring back a bunch of footage and pictures to use in future videos. So, supporting them also really supports the show and my ability to make really cool content. So, if you're interested in giving Crunchyroll a try, you can sign up for a free 2-week trial at crunchyroll.com/theorists. And I've already got premium membership, and for $6.95 a month, you'll likely never use cable again. Thanks again, everyone. As always, until next time, this is Gaijin Goombah, signing out.